Thank you, Mark. Round of applause for Mark that pulls this together, and Rick and all the other folks with Creative Mornings. We feel so thankful to be here, and especially it's mid-season for us, and things are bustling in our schoolyard farms, and they've had a lot of patience getting various informations from us, so we're so grateful to be here, and it's such an honor to get to speak to all of you and with all of you, and a part of me wishes actually we could just go in the room because I feel like there's people here that have amazing things to share and for us to learn from. So we're lucky, and today our intention is to introduce ourselves to you, a little bit about our background, to share how that informs crazy or awesome decisions we make in our lives around pursuing our passion creatively. And then speak to one of the fruits of that passion, which is fresh roots, and also dreams of what may come one day or may not. So we're going to start with Mark.
So the last time that I spoke in front of a group this large, everyone was my student and I was grading them. So the relationship was a little bit different. So I want to talk actually about kind of my background in genocide prevention policy, which is really how I came to food. During from 2000 to 2010, in a place in the Sudan in Darfur, there was a genocide that happened there. And I'm Jewish, and the story of genocide is one that is part of my history. It's part of the world in which we live in today. It's part of what we see in Iraq, in Syria, people being killed for who they are. And a big reason that this happens is because there's conflict over resources. And particularly in the Sudan, in Darfur, water is a key resource. And farmers and herdsmen would be fighting for that resource. And so as I began to do this research, I recognized that there is a tremendous impact that our business, that our choices, the things that we buy, the things that we are involved with have on what happens around the world. And when we look at things like this iPhone, which has tantalum, tin, tungsten, and gold all inside of it, that's what makes it vibrate, makes it able to connect to the internet. And a lot of those minerals are mined in the Congo. And the Congo is the longest running civil war that's the world has ever seen. It's the #1 place where rape happens in the world. And a large part of what allows that conflict to fuel is because of the choices that are made around the world based on our consumptive practices. And these two key points, the relationship that we have from a financial point for the choices that we make and the impacts that it has, as well as this conflict over resources, began to lead me to this idea that I need to think critically about the choices that I'm making. And I make 3 choices a day in relation to food. And those are choices that maybe I can make something that's a little bit of a better choice. And so the reason that I got involved in food is because I started to recognize how important it was for me to understand to whom I am accountable and to what I am accountable for. And so when it comes to food and food choices, I started to recognize that a lot of the people that are working in the fields in California and across the United States are people that are often without recourse to legal means. These are people that are often brought into the United States in ways that are not as germane and as above board as we would like, and that they're often paid poorly and not given the kinds of advantages that I have as a white-skinned man that gets a benefit of being a white-skinned man in our society. And so As I was doing this work at the University of Pittsburgh, I recognized that our university was invested in companies that were kind of engaging in these practices in the Sudan, particularly into minerals companies as well as telecommunications companies that would essentially shut off the cell phone communication when the government was going to be killing people there. And as I recognized this, I said, hey, my tuition dollars are supporting this. And we led a divestment campaign and to make sure that we were not invested in these companies. And as we were doing that, we sat down with the chief financial officer of the university, we sat down with provosts and people that were able to make decisions, and they said, oh, this is all well and good, but our investment practices are such that we don't change them for any reason. We essentially failed. This divestment endeavor failed. And luckily, these companies were pushed by their shareholders to make changes. But what I really learned from that is that at the end of the day, when financial goals and financial dreams are sitting at one side of the stage, and social goals and social dreams are sitting at the other in opposing ways, there's not going to be any movement. The financial goals are usually larger, well-staffed with people in suits, and the social goals are usually less well-funded, and usually the people there are giving of their time and engaging in something that they love in, and maybe it's not necessarily something that they're able to put their livelihood into. And so really from that, I learned that I need to connect these two things, this financial sustainability as well as the social goals. And food is something that is such a critical way of doing this. And so in Pittsburgh, I started an organization called Plant to Plate, essentially starting to connect food from where it's grown to teach students how they could cook it, because a turnip is only so good as the mashed turnips that you can make with butter and a little bit of cream and a little bit of salt. And we connected that to a Somali refugee population in town that was really interested in sharing their agricultural skills with their children. So we got to benefit from these people who had been taken from a place where they weren't able to practice their agricultural skills, and they could share that with us, and they could share that with their kids and pass along that information and that relationship that they had with both the environment and with their culture. And so food to me became something that was about connecting not only this kind of food culture, this way of being able to tell a story about ourselves, but also a means of providing for oneself, particularly in the places where I'd been learning. Agriculture is a critically important thing. It feeds all of us 3 times a day, and for me, 5 to 9 times a day, depending on my physical exertions of the day. And that's a really critical thing. And the choices that we make around food can have a tremendous impact on the way that we're thinking, the people that we come in contact with, and the food system that is one of the largest, most of the things that our society is involved in some way revolve around food. Agriculture and food production and retail, these are all a humongous part not only of our GDP, but also of our everyday activities and who we are. And so food to me has become one of the most important things that I've been able to get involved with. And I really do that from this place of recognizing that we can make a change in the way that the world functions through the way that we eat. And so I came to Vancouver really because I started to recognize that I wanted to see what was happening in inner cities. When 81% of the population in Canada is living in an urban zone, a lot of people don't have that connection to the environment or to agriculture or to where their food is coming from. And I said, well, maybe in urban settings we can begin to educate, and we can begin to teach, and we can begin to learn a little bit about where things are coming from and what that means. And so 74% of students that were interviewed didn't know that a tortilla chip had corn in it. And when you start to not recognize what it is that your food's made of, it makes it a lot easier for people to get that corn from anywhere. It makes it a lot easier to make sure that those practices of the people that are working on those fields are, who cares? Because I don't know what corn is. I don't know what a tortilla chip is. And so to really begin to educate in an urban setting is something that's been really important to me. And so Fresh Roots, I came into Fresh Roots through my master's degree. I looked at the economic viability of urban farms here in Vancouver. And in 2010, there were 10 urban farms. In 2011, there were 15. Over that time, they've supported over 30 employees, people that are getting paid to grow food for their neighbors inside the city of Vancouver. And then I started to recognize that maybe this is something that we could continue to grow. Maybe this is something that we could continue to educate and teach people around what food is and how they can connect to it. And so Llana was a research participant, and Llana had been doing a number of budgets, and my background's in finance, and I got this call one night at around 9:30 that I was like, oh, hey, can you help me with one of these budgets that I'm doing? I'm like, oh, when's it due? Tomorrow morning. And I was like, okay. I was in university, so 9:30, that's a good time to start anything. And so from that, Llana and I have been trying to come up with ways that we can really start to engage and educate not only youth, but our grandparents and our elders to be able to take the knowledge that they have to help share what healthy eating and what food culture is as a means of connecting to our own histories and as a means of connecting to the people that are involved in agriculture all over the world. And so I'm going to pass it over to Llana to talk about her story and to talk a little bit more about Fresh Roots.
Thank you. I'm actually, can I speak into this one? Can I pass this to you? I need to use my hands when I speak. I only have one right now. Thank you, Mark. So Mark and I are this, part of why Fresh Roots is able to grow so strong right now, there's a few different reasons. Van City is a gigantic one, which I'll get to in a moment. But the other part is that we're such a brilliant shmush of different backgrounds. I come from a pretty same but different background as Mark, and I was raised in Chicago, so I'm also an American, and my mom had recently moved to the States, and my parents became close friends with a bunch of folks who had recently moved to the States, and we're all working hard, starting up new businesses. We spent a lot of time eating deep dish Chicago pizza and bagels and cream cheese. And one of the only times we really came together at the table was during Jewish ritual dinners, which became a core place for our family to share what was going on with us. And when I left home, I ended up doing all kinds of stuff, which was not really including university for a while. But one of the things ended up leading me to this multinational peace institute that Mark mentioned in southern Israel. And it's a school that brings together Israelis, Palestinians, Jordanians, Egyptians. They do projects with Iraqis and Iranians, and all exploring how to create coexistence and open doors for conflict resolution discourse around the environment. So we would sit in rooms and have some really heated debates about water and what else have you. But the moment we walked into the agriculture fields, somebody would look and say, yo, my grandma, she used to harvest that leaf and boil it and made my bellyache go away. And someone else would say, oh my God, my grandma did the same thing. And time again, people were finding they had these astounding connections around food. And similar to what Mark said, food is just one of these timeless, universal acts of community. And hopefully everybody eats. And from there, so I really saw there the opportunity for food and agriculture to be a platform for so much more. And from there, I ended up with the incredible opportunity to participate with Growing Power based out of Chicago and Milwaukee. And there they build urban farms as places to teach basic vocational skills to high school aged youth in the city, as well as create safe community gathering spaces. And they're awesome at what they do, especially in areas where you don't always know what's going to happen if you try to get yourself to the corner store. So I've seen the incredible opportunity for farming and agriculture to play a role in people's lives that's much more than just food, although food alone is wholly and important. And I ended up in Vancouver in a few different ways, but a friend and I, we decided like, hey, we both have other jobs, but we love growing food. What if we start growing food in a backyard and see how much food could we grow in a small space? Could we sell it to our neighborhood affordably? Could we learn how to do it while we're doing it? Like a lot of different questions. And we had a lot of fun, and the next year we were like, oh, this is really fun. Let's expand to 8 backyards. I expanded to 8 backyards, and while doing so, a local elementary school, Queen Alexandra Elementary, we happened to, one of our backyards shared a fence with them, and they had this big garden that over 10 years ago, they got a big grant to establish a big garden, and as soon as the grant money ran out and the maintenance for the garden ran out, they found, being that it's often near 2 main transit lines, folks all of a sudden were sleeping in the garden, and they were finding beer bottles in the garden, and it became a challenging space for the students and teachers to use. So they said, hey, Fresh Roots, can we work with you somehow? And I was like, we're a project, we got no money. Everything was built out of back alley found materials at that point. But yeah, we love teachers and students. So we decided, because they had no money and we had no money, well, what if we established a small farm where we grew food and sold it into the neighborhood, and we helped the teachers learn how to use it as an outdoor classroom? Experiment. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't actually make much money at that point, but it became an astounding success for the teachers' end, where that garden was totally reclaimed. And there was something about having the consistent presence of a young farmer stewarding that attracted so many students in the garden. They wanted to do everything that we were doing. They wanted to eat everything that we were growing. All of a sudden, teachers are bringing the students out, and they were learning poetry and biology and math, and neighbors were also stopping by, sharing their stories of where they grew up in the agriculture fields of here or there. And for the neighbors that couldn't communicate with us verbally, would come and share seeds with us and teach us how to sow them and teach us how to hoe them. And before we knew it, this space became an astounding garden where intergenerational and cross-cultural knowledge sharing abounds. And we began to use it as a place to teach professional development days to teachers district-wide as well as province-wide, helping teachers learn how they can achieve core curriculum objectives in a garden as an outdoor learning classroom. And a lot of teachers are keen for various reasons, and some is that there's more and more academic research piling showing that learning in gardens helps reduce bullying, helps reduce racism, helps influence young people to make healthier food choices. And so as we were having fun learning, more teachers wanted something like this, and we didn't really, it was this opportunity of, okay, well, we're gonna write grants and have gardens in other schools, and we thought, well, let's be creative. What could we do that would be different this time? And we thought, well, what if we built a farm whose revenue could cover the operational costs, and then the school would have access to us as a long-term resilient partnership. So all of a sudden, the teachers who already had school gardens and had no time to maintain them and steward them and teach their classes would have folks that became the stewards of the classroom, and they just got to bring their students outside into it. And a lot of teachers wanted this, and a lot of parents and community members wanted this. So we thought we were oh so smart, and went to Van City. And I put together these budgets. This is before Mr. Mark Schutzbank came into Fresh Roots' life. And I said, hey, Van City, would you be willing to give money for this project? And Van City, I'm one of those people that's a perfect product of Van City because they totally helped transform this grassroots community desired project into something that has legs and can run. But they looked at me and they took me very seriously with my spreadsheets. I'm sure they wanted to actually just blow their nose into and crumple and toss into the waste paper basket. And they said, well, it sounds like a great idea, Llana, but do you guys have anything that says you can be there in the long term? Like any kind of, anything, sign saying that the school board grounds won't bulldoze you the next day? I was like, oh, what a good idea. No, I didn't even think of it. And so we left Van City's office that day, 3.5 years ago. And from that conversation, what has grown is 3.5 years later, we've recently signed a first-of-its-kind licensing agreement that allows an educational, commercially productive farm to be built on school board property. And what's significant about this is that there's no agreement of its kind in Canada or in the United States. So right now, a lot of people that are doing urban farming are either, there's lots of folks in town doing amazing urban farming, but some of them are on agreements that are actually like art installation permits or tucked into community gardens. There's no entity that has a permit that clearly articulates what this is. And so because Van City really helped us think about going there, and well, inevitably there was no option. We realized, legally we should probably have something robust if we're gonna spend people's money doing this. But now we have phone calls from Ottawa to Texas asking to see this agreement, because it genuinely allows more communities beyond this one to build neighborhood food assets like this. So it's been pretty stupendous. I realize I have photos I forgot about. So Van City, when we went in and had, just spacebar? Woo! Yeah. Thanks. So, when we went into Van City, we were working with students like this, who were bringing in their grandmas and saying, well, my grandma grows her beans way better than you do, just so you know, I'm gonna let her tell you how to do it better. And had opportunities where young people got so excited to eat food, all they wanted to eat was anything coming out of the garden. I've watched young boys arm wrestle for broccoli flowers in this garden.
There's no advertisements for broccoli, but when you get engaged people in the garden touching broccoli, showing off broccoli, all of a sudden it becomes this amazing thing that people want to eat. And these are pea shoots that they're holding up, so excited to eat something green. And that's not Lucky Charms. And there's no toy in the middle of that bag. This is just excitement over getting to eat the food that they picked.
And so part of why Van City, why we were excited and why the parents and the teachers and community members were stoked to, when we're all creatively brainstorming and collaborating and scheming on what we could be doing here, it was because all of a sudden they were seeing students were choosing the food from the garden over other stuff at lunch. And especially, we were watching how successful classes were taking place in the garden. So all of a sudden, instead of students learning asexual reproduction by looking at photos of potatoes and strawberries, students are coming outside and learning sex in the garden by planting potatoes and strawberries. And they were walking away saying, I totally get it, and it was awesome. And so to show kind of, in terms of creativity, there's, 8 gazillion things I personally want to talk about, but I'll just say that something that many folks have been a part of helping put into place is that now Fresh Roots, coming from small backyard garden projects, we started to have all these dreams as a community. As one of our school teachers at Van Tech talks about, is that we've always had dreams. Us teachers have always had dreams, so we talk about them with the PAC, Parent Action Committee, we talk about them with admin, but often they fall through, we never really see them. And something about having a school farm take place is that we've had a dream, we've worked really hard, it has happened, and now we have faith that we can pursue more of our dreams. So recently, just this past weekend, part of why we've been so challenging to get a hold of is that we took a space like this at David Thompson Secondary, close to 13,000 square feet, and with
55th and Knight.
55th and Knight at East Vancouver School, and with a lot of community support and celebrating all along the way, we're really good at celebrating all along the way, we collected the tools and resources that we needed, and even more community support. There were dozens of parents and teachers and community members and organizations and corporations and all kinds of folks came out. We established this, a new school farm. And this was just Tuesday. Welcome to a day in the life. And a part of why it's been supported is because the teachers feel this. Especially, this is from a Van Tech Pro D we held. I feel like the future is happening right now. There's so much despair. We get to point outside and say that here there is hope. And some of our dreams of why all of us want to be doing this is it's one thing to be excited to grow food to sell into the neighborhood. It's another to have access to a garden as a learning classroom where teachers across 10 disciplines are learning how to participate in the garden regardless. Some people want to get dirty, but some people want to teach the Industrial Revolution beside a wheat field, and some people want to talk about colonization and how agriculture has played a role in colonizing a lot of the lands that we live on right now. And there's all kinds of conversations that are not easy, but seem to be able to take place when we're safe and exploring and eating good food together. But I personally, to go back, I also was raised in a Jewish home, and part of what we do every Friday night is we light candles to welcome the Jewish Sabbath, and it's the women in my family that do it, and we put our hands over the candlesticks and we say this blessing, asking to bring in the light and cover our eyes, and I think of all my family members and my ancestors and relax into that space, inviting them to be there with me. I realized that some of my greatest dreams for the future, similar to like where all this stuff is made, is that hopefully I might have girls one day that might be the only women in my family that have not been raped. And I say that because there are so many ways we can achieve dreams like this, and something that we're finding in these gardens is that young people, young women, young men, young folks that don't necessarily identify as either seem to grow confidence and a willingness to share their stories and learn the stories of their ancestors. So for me, that's one of the most exciting reasons why we do this. And we bring a lot of people together, and they feel really safe. And when they feel really safe and really secure and really vulnerable, that's when we invite them to dream big with us. And I think that's our spiel around why we creatively choose to pursue our passions through schoolyard farms. I should also say that Fresh Roots, now that this is happening, folks are asking, hospitals are calling in long-term care facilities and neighborhood houses and all these other institutions, public and private, exploring what are ways we can grow community farms together and offer these opportunities beyond our schoolyards, but definitely within our neighborhoods. So thank you.
Start by asking them a question myself to just start us off. I hope I don't steal anybody's question. So, one of the things that you guys have done and mentioned and talked about is this notion of sustainability from a sort of financial feasibility standpoint, right? And farmers, I remember either you told me or on one of the videos I saw of you, you said something like farmers should be celebrated like rock stars and paid accordingly. I'm paraphrasing, but those are your words. And I agree with you. But, and if you think about it, what we pay for like local and organic food, don't you think farmers should be like loaded? Maybe somebody's getting rich somewhere. Anyway, are you guys finding that this is financially working for you? Are you making good money? If not, are you okay with that? How is this working for you in terms of your career? I mean, we've got to make money and raise our families, right? Go.
Can I start?
Oh, I want to start.
Oh, pretty, please.
Don't fight.
I was here before you were. Is that okay? Yeah. This is an awesome question. And I'll say that Fresh Roots was mostly volunteer-led for the first 3 years that it ran. So 2013 is the first year that everybody working for Fresh Roots is actually getting paid by Fresh Roots. Amazing. And a big part of that is because of Mark, so I'm going to let him answer more for the farming piece. I just wanted to say, are we getting paid enough? If I want to have kids in 3 years, if my salary is the same as it is right now, I'll probably leave Fresh Roots. But it's interesting, I'll focus on Fresh Roots specifically to start another organization so it's a youth-led, like we're so young. It's it's a youth-led organization. And a part of, we're transitioning into getting paid, and then what do our budgets look like for the next year and the following year, is that people are still getting paid as a traditional youth-led environmental organization. Our salaries are similar to others in Vancouver. But part of what we are excited about is rethinking urban landscapes and how can the kind of things that we do actually have fees for service. So we're really, what we're excited about is exploring what are the costs of this and what are the benefits and what are the revenues and how do we help society rethink what they choose to purchase for their urban lots. I'm getting a little messy, so I feel the hand of savior.
So there's kind of like two key points that I want to make. And the first is that an average vegetable farmer in British Columbia on a yearly basis from their farm operations makes about $13,875. I think that's the latest number. And so it increases if you're a dairy farmer because we have protections that are put in place, and it increases if you're a rancher. But the story is that farmers are not well paid. And they're not well paid because we demand cheap food prices at wholesale costs. And it's a purchase that we make every day, so you constantly see your pocketbook getting dinged for buying food. So there's a psychological thing about buying food. Like I have it. Like when I look at how much we pay for food in Vancouver, I'm like, oh my God. And you know, we grow it, right? So we have a relationship to what that means. So the first is that farmers don't make a lot of money. So in terms of Fresh Roots, I literally just got hired on Tuesday. Tuesday night is like the first time that I've been hired. And so
It's true.
what does it mean in terms of our financial viability for ourselves is that we recognize that we are, just as there is a startup, like if this is a for-profit startup,
Mara.
we'd be putting into the organization
If you
and
guys
being
could
able
all
to get
please
equity out of it.
say your name before you
What
ask a
we've
question, I'd
essentially
appreciate
said
it.
is that for us, profit is not as
Hello,
important.
my name is Matt.
The impact is
We spoke
more
earlier about
important to
this,
us.
but I
And
saw something
we're able to
on
do
the
that
news the
because
other
of the
day
privileged
about
place
a girl
in which
New
we've
York.
come from.
Or no,
I
she's
have
from
no
Vancouver,
loans,
but she
and I've
took
been
an
in
idea
school
from New York that
for
she saw, and she took her
a long
truck
time.
and took the
Yeah,
flat
I
deck
was
on the
at university
back,
for
filled it
7
with
years,
soil,
so
and
I don't
planted
have
a
any
garden,
loans, so
and
I
she
can
drives
really,
around
I'm able
Vancouver
to
and
do that.
essentially slowly,
But
obviously.
if I didn't have that, then this
Where is
choice
she?
would be difficult.
That
for me.
lady right there.
And what we want to do is
She's
try
awesome.
to monetize
Everybody
the
should clap for her
difficult
right
things
now.
to monetize for these sorts of projects. So if you have a community garden, the increase of
visit
the
her truck
houses around
if
that,
it's outside.
that community garden is 5 to 7%.
There you go. So
But the community
my
gardeners,
question
they don't
is,
get, they don't
what
see
do you
that.
guys
That
have
gets
planned
only
in
the
the
housing.
future as
Well, what
far
about the
as,
change in lifestyle?
expanding
So
and also,
people are
like,
choosing to eat
maybe not
healthier food
necessarily
because they're
just
participating
focusing on schools,
in the
but
garden.
what else
And
could
so
you
we're
guys do? And
spending
then
less
what would
money
you
on a
recommend
healthcare
for
perspective.
us to do
Well,
as individuals
who sees
and
the benefit of that? It's not the farmers, it's not the community gardeners, it's the hospitals, it's society as a whole, and it's a diffuse structure. So how do we monetize and create like clear incentives for people to grow these farms and make sure that the people that are growing those farms are able to get paid in a way that they choose to do it? We're never going to compete with a retail store. Like Starbucks on 400 square feet is going to sell a hell of a lot more stuff than we are on 400 square feet. But we may change 1,000 people's eating habits. And what is the benefit of that? And that's what we're working on now. That's our next move, is to try and figure out how do we tailor kind of the benefits to a monetizable strategy so that we can actually pay people to do these things all across Canada. That's our goal.
And then within those, so we have like 8 gazillion dreams of what kinds of programs do we want to see taking place in our market gardens, our neighborhood market gardens. So I have this quiet dream that we'll start having monthly potlucks where the theme is fish, and everybody come with their ancestors' cultural relationship with how they prepare fish and share it with one another. You know, so I'd come with like herring or something gross and vodka to follow the eating of it.
I can take that first part, and I'm going to leave the second part for
But something
Llana.
like this.
And kind of
or
where we're looking
at one of the schools at David,
to move now
it's not
is
up anymore. At
particularly
David Thompson,
around
they have the
hospitals,
BioCycle
neighborhood
program where
houses,
students
and
are
what we call
riding
what we
their
do is
bicycles to
neighborhood
restaurants
market
around the
gardens.
neighborhood and picking
So
up the
what we
compost and
do
bringing
is
it back
go
to
to
their
a
big
public
composter and
institution
getting
or
paid for
private
that.
institution that has
And
publicly accessible
and then they're making
land,
soil for
and
their
try to
school
convert
garden.
that
So there's
land,
so many
which may or
different
may not be
ways that
used
folks
for,
can, the high school students are
sometimes
wanting
it's
to
just nice green
generate
space.
farm
history of
tours for
grass
the
is an
elementary students and bring them into the use the farm to teach
aristocratic
sustainability
idea,
from
where they would
like
have
youth to
individual
youth,
people
run by
come and
youth.
clip the grass as they would
So
walk
there's
around.
like lots of
and so everyone kind of wants a piece of that
awesome
aristocracy.
programs, and especially a lot of the folks
when
we work
see
with
grass
are leaving
that's not necessarily
really inspired
being
to
used for
do
public purpose, what we're really
whatever
interested in
when they
is
leave the
converting
garden. Some
that
folks
to the
want to
benefits that
start
we've
like
been talking about
canning
when we have a
workshops,
farm.
and
So hospitals
one
in
of the
particular.
folks that worked with
I
us
was
wanted
just
to
speaking
build
with Hillary,
a
and
cob
when we're
oven
thinking
in
about
a
what
community
it
garden and
means
host
to
monthly
get
pizza
healthy
making
from
parties.
an emotional
So I think
and
that's
a
similar
physical
too.
standpoint,
Is like there's all
doing that
these
in isolation is
different
in
ways
hospitals is
people
often
just
not
get
the best
wildly inspired, and I
emotional
think our
space to do
job
it.
is
And
to
farms and gardens
support
are a really
them
wonderful
in
place to be
pursuing
able
their
to heal
craziest
ourselves.
dreams.
And so that's a place that we are really
'Cause all of them are
fascinated about
awesome.
moving into, is how do we get good, healthy local food in
I'm on the
hospitals
move.
and in neighborhood houses
Coming
where
over here
communities
because
can really
I
start
think
to
she
engage
deserves
around
a minute with a
these issues.
I just have one question. Have you guys gotten into any traditional and or non-traditional applications for vertical gardening?
Uh, No. we've been invited to. We've explored, we've thought about it, we kind of chewed on it. We realized we have a capacity that's this much to do what we're trying to put on our plate, which is this much, and often the result of that is folks like Jessica and Ashley don't hear from me for months, and so we're trying to take bite by bite, and also it's exciting that it becomes a platform where other folks come into the gardens and say, hey, can I design this in the garden so everybody can see it and participate with it. And so we're really looking forward to just stewarding spaces that other folks can feel really comfortable to come and share what they do and build within as well.
Okay, who's got a killer question? I saw a couple of hands. There's these, oh yeah, now she's like, no. I'm gonna go to this side and I'll come back.
Hi, my name is Yash. My question is, with the school season and the farming season not really overlapping, how do you keep the students engaged over the summer? And have you looked into things like summer camps at the farms, or even getting like youth summer jobs at the farms? And where are you going with that?
It's an awesome question. Thank you for asking it. So we happen to, I speak about the privilege of working on this land, and often we talk about how we're farming on unceded Coast Salish territory, and much of the reason why the land is so fertile is because the folks that have been here for so long have stewarded it in such a good way. And we're so grateful, and we're just so privileged and honored. And a part of that also is that this climate is so unique and special that food really grows here year-round. So what we intentionally grow in our school farms are what we call our school year harvest, and grow foods that are harvestable from September through June. So there's always ways that students can come outside and eat from and participate in the school farm, and teachers can always use it. So there will not be many tomatoes in our school farms, but there'll be lots of cooking greens and lettuce greens and choys and beans and etc. That said, there are so many students keen on, already students are joining us, but there are many students keen on seeing how they can be spending their summers with us. I sit on the advisory committee of a program called SOIL, Sustainable Opportunities for Youth Leadership, and it's a program founded by a woman in town who, it brings together high school youth from, I think, 4 or 5 different secondary schools in Vancouver. And all summer long, they work in different school gardens, learning sustainability and focusing on using a whole food system as a teacher for greater sustainability initiatives. So they are going to be participating in our Van Tech School Farm, as well as our David Thompson School Farm. And we're really looking forward to seeing how that goes, because my background is coming from folks that run youth programs on farms. So we are going to lightly put our toes in the water. We have lots of dreams of what kinds of programs will be run from the farms as we grow and our capacity grows.
I feel like we're in a time warp. We're already approaching 10. So would it be okay if we take one more question? Is that okay? On a scale of 1 to 10, how awesome is your question? 8? How awesome is yours? You put your hand up over here. You can't? No? But on a scale of 1 to 10, how awesome is yours? It's a 10? It's a 10?
And just to kind of piggyback off that is that our farmer isn't a
I just want to thank you for what you've done, and I recognize that there's a capacity issue right now with scaling
like specific
upward.
relationship and their job
And
is
I'm sure a
to
lot of people are
talk
going
and
to come
have
your way and ask the same
relationships with the
question,
people that are in
which
that community.
is,
And
maybe
summer
you
can be
talk
a really
bit more
tough time
about
for a
the
lot of kids.
conditions of possibility
There's not a lot of
for this
structure.
one-of-a-kind,
Though we all, or I
permit that
personally
you
say
have.
that I don't
What are
like
some
it.
of
I
the
like
key
need
puzzle
it in order to
pieces that people
thrive.
should be
And I
thinking
think that
about
that's the
now
case for a
so
lot
they
of
can
the
kind of get their
students
act
that are
together
just
before
around
they
us.
come to you
And so
for
our
guidance?
neighborhood farmer helps to provide some of that
Thank you.
structure. Like they're there every single day at these times. And what I found in a number of the other urban farms is that there's like a gaggle of 12-year-olds that will come out every single day because their mom or dad kicks them out of the house. And they say, go do something productive and then be back here for dinner. And that's kind of what's been happening in an informal way. And as we kind of develop these farms, we'll be developing these programs in a more formal way, and particularly as they grow. Like anything, we're planting the seed, and we're just seeing the cotyledons, we're just seeing those first leaves come out, and we'll begin to really see that fruit come as we really develop this program out. And so that's where we're going to develop those more formal structures, and for right now, we'll have those informal ones. That was a wonderful question, thank you. So I'd like to say that what we're doing, technically in the city of Vancouver, is illegal. So there's interest in making that, and part of my thesis has a list of things that the city can pass in order to increase this, and their intention is to do that, but there's a process and a cycle, and this is really new for them. So some of the things in particular that need to happen is that urban agriculture needs to have a zoning designation and needs to be allowed kind of like based on whatever size and restraints that the city wants to put on. We'd prefer, of course, less restraints so that we can be more creative, but also recognizing that there's needs of homeowners to feel safe in their space. So the city needs to develop a permitting system and a zoning structure for us to be able to do what we are doing. The second thing is that there needs to be a business license for selling produce, because that is actually not legal either. And so figuring that model out on the city's aspect will help us to be able to do what we're doing. We're essentially the same thing as a bake sale right now. So that's kind of like from a legal perspective on the city of Vancouver. In terms of our landowners, really, Llana's been working on this for the past 3.5 years, and at Van Tech, they've been working on having a school farm for the past 10 years. So at the turn of the century, schoolyard gardens in the 1900s were something that were happening across. There's a newspaper that was, not a newspaper, a magazine that was printed across North America.
I heard the question a little bit differently.
And really, as kind of like hygiene and public health became more important, there were rules that disallowed these sorts of programs.
So I do get phone calls
and that really
from
stopped after
really
World War II, and the Victory Gardens, which were funded by the government, were phased out. And so we're kind of having a resurgence of these particular land needs. And so things that we're thinking about is long-term tenure. Farmers need to be able to invest in their land.
It's one thing to want to build a school farm, but it's another thing to take the time to put the business model in place, to have a clear community engagement plan, to have a clear amount of support. I have farmers calling, and I have school groups calling, and environmental organizations.
We need water.
In various
here
places
in Vancouver,
calling, and it's
have a lot of water during a
weaving
certain part of the year, and we
really
have essentially
smart
no water, although
partnerships
we're getting some
to be
today
in a
or
position to then actually
we need access
utilize
to that water,
a licensing
or we need
agreement
access
and put it
to
into
gathering
place.
and holding that water.
I feel real
so
strong.
if
This
we're
is another
catching
Van
that
City
rainwater and being
shout
able
out,
to
but
use it
they
later.
They played a
Third
really
thing that we
big role,
need
not
is
only in the
community
concept of
support.
helping
And this is
understand
really
what a
the
licensing
largest and
agreement
most
is
important
needed,
thing.
but also
We can really
helping
do
me
anything
with
if we
no,
have
I mean,
a group of 100 people behind us
finance
demanding.
background. In fact, any money
Everything
I
that
find
Fresh
for
Roots is
Fresh
doing
Roots, he
isn't
takes and
because
puts
like we
somewhere.
came up with an idea
I try to
and then
find it,
like
it's like
sold it.
disappeared.
It's really that people have been demanding
But
us to
it's
do
Van
this
City. Some of the
every
folks
day. Llana gets these
at
like,
Van City
phone
have
calls
really
from all
helped
over
me
the place
understand what kind
asking
of
for this
business
to happen.
model do we
It's
need
parents,
and what
it's
are the
teachers,
costs
it's students
gonna
that
be,
say
and
like
thinking in
something's
the long
weird
term.
in the
And
relationship
I've had folks
that I
say, what
have
is your
to my
10-year
food.
plan and what is
And I want it to
your
change,
personal
and I
10-year
think
plan?
that you
And
guys
before
can help us to
how
do
can you design
So those are really
a
the
plan
three
to grow a
key
new
things
entity
from my perspective.
if you don't have
maybe
your
you can add,
personal
is
10-year
land
plan
tenure,
in place?
it's utilities,
Because what if you end up designing
it's
something, but
community
you're actually not
demand.
achieving
Those three
anything that
things
you
we
want
can make it
individually?
happen.
So all these business
Sunlight, of
advisors
course, is
said
always
no
an
to me
extra
when I asked them
bonus,
for help
but
because I
we
didn't have
can
my
try
own
and make
personal
that
10-year
happen.
plan in place. And then as soon as I did and I kind of began to understand what I wanted to do, Van City really helped encourage me to put things into a business perspective and put costs to ideas and explore what does this pragmatically look like. And that's when we were finally in a good position to sign an agreement that would allow us to make it a reality.
Thank you very much. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the Q&A.
Thank you. Have a seat. I'll wrap it up.
Can I
Okay.